Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. My name is Amber DeWinter. I teach the Bulldog Press class, and usually I would have students do these interviews. However, this is a pretty important and complex issue, so I'm going to do this interview today myself. I am joined with Chad Hance, the superintendent of Cache Public Schools, and with Steve Robinson, who is the school's attorney on all civil matters. We're going to take some time today to go over the issue of our current lawsuit against the county assessor and other parties regarding the mistake in evaluation that was made a year ago. We've got some notes in front of us, and I want to be absolutely transparent that this is an incredibly complex issue, and so there's no way to get through this interview and provide the facts without having some notes, but it's absolutely not a script. And we're just going to try to take you guys through the chronology of everything that happened as best we can. So today, Mr. Robinson, I am going to get started with you. And I really just kind of want to know the basics of the parties involved in the lawsuit and why they are named in the lawsuit. So as simply as you could explain that.
Okay. Obviously, Cache Public Schools is a plaintiff,
right,
which means we're bringing the lawsuit. And the defendants, the named defendants, are Grant Edwards individually. Mm-hmm. Grant Edwards is our county assessor of Comanche County, the county treasurer, and initially it was the Comanche County Excise Board.
Okay. So you say initially it was the Excise Board, so explain that a little bit more.
The Excise Board, they filed a motion to remove them from the lawsuit, which was granted by the judge in the Comanche County District Court. And in speaking with the Board of Education, we kind of anticipated we would lose one of the defendants, and that was probably the least culpable person or culpable entity in the lawsuit.
Gotcha. So the Excise Board's no longer on the lawsuit. So Grant Edwards as county assessor, because he provides the valuation for our school taxes, or how does that work? The
county assessor basically determines the value of all real and personal property within the county, not just Cache Public Schools. And so every year they're supposed to do an evaluation of all your houses, your land, and then any kind of personal property, which would be machinery, equipment, intangible type things that still have value, and they determine what that is in order to collect tax revenue. Okay. And then you said the county treasurer was also named, obviously because they're probably collecting and then distributing that tax money. Correct.
Right? Okay.
Once the valuation is certified, the treasurer is required by law to collect the amount of property taxes that are certified by the county assessor and according to our estimate of needs that Cache Public Schools has approved our budget.
Okay. And so did I miss anybody in my recap there?
Not that's currently still in the lawsuit.
Okay, fantastic. All right, and so Mr. Hance, talk to us about why those taxes, like that tax valuation, is important. How does the school get its money?
Well, essentially, school finance is broken down into three pots of money. You have your local dollars, you have your state dollars, and you have federal dollars. So essentially, the local dollars are your ad valorem taxes paid by our taxpayers, as well as any type of gross production or REA tax or motor vehicle. So those are all local revenue dollars that come to the school district.
Okay. And then the state dollars. So
the state dollar, the state aid supplements where a school district may fall short from local revenue. So, for instance, a school district that has a high valuation or local wealth for more money coming in
right,
through
okay,
ad valorem or whatever, the less state aid a school district will receive. Vice versa.
So we're just kind of balancing out the funding formula there for those kids.
Yeah, the reason why it's called state aid is because it's there to supplement the loss of local dollars that come into the school district. Great.
So higher ad valorem, lower state aid.
Correct.
Right? Lower ad valorem, higher state
Correct.
aid. Okay, fantastic. So we're going to start walking through this timeline, and I just want to be sure that we get kind of all the facts out there for our stakeholders so that they understand what's going on. So every year, the assessor's office completes a tax valuation on all the properties in our school district, right? Okay. And that valuation is ultimately what's going to determine what our ad valorem, and then the ad valorem determines what your state aid is, right? Okay. So how many times a year does our state Department of Ed disperse state aid funds?
There's two allocations. There's the initial allocation that comes around in the month of July,
Okay.
and then there's a midterm allocation that usually comes around in December.
Okay. All right. And the initial allocation of money is based on what valuation? Not our current school year's.
Previous school year's valuation.
The previous school year's valuation. So for this case, when we are looking at just our lawsuit here, that would have been the 2020-2021 school year.
Correct.
So we are getting our first disbursement of state aid based on what Grant Edwards' office, the county assessor's office,
For the previous year.
says from 2021. Okay.
And the reason why it's the previous year is because our budget or estimates, those valuations aren't certified until August, sometimes September. So
After school starts.
after school
Yeah.
starts and after the initial allocations are released. So the State Department depends on last year's numbers.
So we get last year's numbers, and then the second allocation, I guess, would get updated.
The midterm adjustment is based on your student enrollment for your first 9 weeks of school,
Okay.
as well as previous collections of local dollars from the previous school year. And the main portion of that is going to be your ad valorem.
Okay. So now that's kind of a much more recent picture, right? That
Correct, yep.
Based on this
Realistic, yeah.
current, the current. So that second one comes later in the school year and is based on the current year. Okay. So how does the excise board play into this? So do they have to certify something? Yes.
Yes, the budget it goes. What happens is we have our budget preparer, our treasurer. They go in, they prepare a budget based on last year's expenditures and revenues, and what kind of debt we might have. That then is sent to our board. Our board acknowledges it.
Our school board.
Our school board.
Yep.
And then it gets sent to the county. The county approves the county approves the estimate of needs, the final budget.
That's the county excise board.
Yes.
So
We don't do our estimate of needs until we receive that valuation.
gotcha.
So that valuation number comes to us usually July, 1st of August. Once we get that valuation, then our budget preparer will take that number, and that is how we determine how many levies or millage levies that we can assess to the school district to pay our debt.
Okay, so the county actually plays a big role in not just providing funds, but actually approving the school budget. It's not like we do this on our own, basically. It's all got to be approved.
I think, schools, cities, they all have to go through an estimate of needs or a budget process.
Okay, all right. So I just want to pause here and review for our viewers. So in July, we get a state aid allocation, July or August, we get a state aid allocation based on the previous year's tax valuation. We take that and build our budget from it, right? And that gets approved by our school board and then the county excise board. Okay. And then in August, we get an updated budget. Is that correct? For the upcoming school or for the rest of the school year, because we get the new valuation from, or the final valuation, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the State Department is going to give you an initial allocation.
Right.
You should expect this amount of dollars based on this information from the previous school year.
Right.
Okay. Then after that, once the school receives that initial allocation, that's your starting point.
Gotcha.
Okay. Then as we prepare our budget, that happens in August, September, which gets approved by the board and then the excise board, et cetera, and sent to the state auditor's office. Then that number is sent, that valuation, those estimate needs, is then sent to the State Department of Education, and they take that valuation and those projected tax dollars, and they put that in our midterm allocation.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
for instance, in this case, we had a previous valuation of $124 million, and then so our initial allocation had that number in there, which we'd have collected probably around $3 million in ad valorem tax. That's probably not the right number, but it's just this assumption. And so we'd have collected that. Well, due to the false evaluation, that number went from 124 to 171. So what they were saying was you are going to collect, instead of $3 million in taxes, you're going to collect almost $5 million in taxes. Well, what happens then is the State Department said, well, you're going to collect $5 million in taxes and ad valorem, so we're going to take
That state aid has to
away.
drop.
That
Yeah.
state aid has to drop.
Okay.
So that's what happens.
Okay. All right. So let's just keep moving forward here. So you're notified. In fact, you just kind of touched on this. You're notified of the assessor's evaluation and the excise board's approval, and it was different than the previous year. You just said it was.
I mean, when you talk about a $51 million increase in valuation, that's a net assessed valuation. So that means that $51 million would have been over $500 million worth of improvements within one school year in our county. So, because everything's assessed at 11.25%. So once I received that valuation, my first thought was to question that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is very different. But at the same time as this, we've got a new bond issue that we are about to put forward to the people.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
So once we have the valuation and we have our estimate of needs, okay, what happens then is our sinking millage levy, what we pay our debt, our property taxes.
Yes, the sinking fund, right?
Sinking fund,
yeah,
okay,
pays the debt for the school.
So we know it's going to drop.
Yeah.
Because it did drop from 30 mils to 20 mils.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what we usually have a target of keeping our millage rate around 30 mils. That's what our community's always supported and been a willing partner to do. So once we notice that drop and that valuation comes apart, then obviously we've got to do something to kind of keep that sinking fund level back to where our target rate is. So in the fall, I'm saying probably October, September, October, we start talking about a bond issue,
right?
Because this is great. So we might be able to have a bond issue and be able to get these dollars here to improve, do a field house and make improvements on our middle school. And it shouldn't be a tax increase. Okay, it should be our millage levy would have stayed about 30 mils, which has always been our target deal. So that started that discussion.
Right. So by October, we're talking about this. We get it on the election calendar. We vote in February of 22, if I remember, right? Okay. So in early spring of 22, you had talked to me about this before, about this general obligation bond that's sold in early spring, right? Mm-hmm. And that was to kind of get things rolling on the middle school, right?
So once the bond was passed, once the bond issue was supported by the community, I think we had well over 60% support. We had to sell the bonds, and so the first thing that we do is what we call a general obligation bond. That is a bond issue that's incurred, that debt's incurred, but the money goes to us to start, paying for some of the startup stuff, either the surveys or architect fees, et cetera. You had to have some kind of money up front to make those payments. So that's where the general obligation bond comes in. It was $1 million.
Okay.
So that's the only, right now, currently, that's the only indebtedness from the February 22 bond issue on the tax rolls right now.
Just the $1 million.
Just the $1 million, yes.
So we're really kind of like rocking along. All things are normal up to this point, and it's late spring, like around April, that you start to realize that something is not adding up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like we're cooking with Crisco.
Right.
We're growing.
The bond.
We're doing a lot of different things. We're providing more opportunities for our schools, our students. We just got passed another bond issue, a major one, probably the largest bond issue that we had. So we really feel good about ourselves. We're moving in a great direction. We're moving forward, full speed ahead. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing April, May, hey, okay, our revenue's down. What's up?
Right.
So that's when I kind of started looking into what's the shortfall.
Okay. So how do you go about finding out why there's a shortfall? Talk me through some of the people that you call, because you were on the phone a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, starting back, I mean, even back in January, I was told that Goodyear had put their taxes into what they call an escrow account because of COVID. They did not meet their manufacturer tax exempt status, where the state pays their taxes. Because of COVID, they didn't meet a standard. I think it was payroll, maybe. I don't know for sure. I said, okay, that's understandable, but there was legislation by Senator Montgomery that was going to fix that. So that was what I was led to believe. So as we rock along that spring, we had this legislation, and I'm in communication with John Michael Montgomery.
Right.
And the legislation's going through. It passed, and I'm like, okay, is this an emergency deal? Is this going to get something done before July 1? Because I'm going to be short if I don't receive that ad valorem money. And he said it should be, yeah. Well, April, May rocks along, and I don't hear anything. I don't. There's no change. Nothing's changed. And so about probably the end of May, I was noticing that our ad valorem collections was down, and we always get a big check at the end of June. And it comes from the State Department. It comes from the state, Oklahoma Tax Commission,
Okay,
to
the tax commission.
to the county treasurer's office,
Okay.
and then that's dispersed to the school district.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I was like, okay, well, that must be a big check
Mm-hmm.
because we're under collecting quite a bit. So that check coming from the
Right.
state should be a large check.
So do you call the tax commission?
I called the county treasurer first.
Okay.
They're not. They don't know that number. They don't know what number is sent from the county assessor to the Oklahoma Tax Commission. So, long story short, I chased it around and that to where I finally got a hold of somebody that had that information. And when I received that information, it was probably about the first week of June. I noticed that the number they had and the number that I was expecting didn't match up, and we were going to be very, very well short.
Right.
So I contacted the county treasurer's office to find out what they knew, and they were unaware. So that's how this whole issue became to light.
Right. So, did you also try confirming those numbers with the county assessor's office at that point?
Well, at that point, it all went to the county treasurer.
Oh, the assessor was already done.
County assessor, the evaluation, they
Yeah.
were already done. They were already working on that following year. So, no, I was trying to figure out what money I could expect, in June from the Oklahoma
Right.
Tax Commission.
Okay, so I want to stop here and kind of review again, right? So we've got our budget approved by the excise board by August of 21. We established our budget for the remainder of the school year. We're cooking with Crisco, right? Just like you said, like we are rocking along. Our midterm allocation, because our valuation goes up, our midterm allocation of state aid comes down. But we're still looking really good. We start talking about the bond in October, put it on the election in February. Again, things are great. And then April is where you basically have to hunt down the numbers, and you're in contact with our senator about some legislation that could have thrown our numbers off. You're in contact with the Oklahoma Tax Commission and the county treasurer to try to figure out what's going on. And you're not getting the same story from everyone, basically.
No,
not at all.
No.
Okay.
Everybody was kind of like, well, we don't know, we don't understand.
Right.
I shouldn't say they don't understand. Of course, they understood. But they weren't able to have the answers.
Right.
Nobody had the answers.
Right,
Nobody
right.
could figure out why we were short and why there was going to be
Right.
under collecting.
Right.
So,
Until about June 17th, right? That's when you get a call from Rhonda Brantley,
Yes.
who is our county treasurer. And what does Miss Brantley tell you?
well, the phone call kind of went where there was a mistake. They had found a mistake.
Mhm.
So essentially, let me back up there a little bit. After our conversation, and I will say that the county treasurer's office, Mrs. Brantley, was great and assisted me through this. She did a lot of legwork helping us out, trying to find this out.
Mhm.
But I do believe it's my understanding that the county treasurer's office reached out to Goodyear and said, hey, we have an issue here. Goodyear went back and looked at their paperwork, what they were expecting, and that's when the mistake was found, that somebody, something was valued at a wrong amount.
Okay. But it's June 17th now, right? And so the excise board and the school board have a meeting about 10 days later on June 27th, correct? And what does the excise board do at that meeting? Because you guys are kind of really watching this now to see if this mistake in valuation is accurate.
Sure. Well, once they found the mistake, then they've got to correct that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way they can correct that mistake is to enter the correct valuation that Goodyear had. And so when they made the correction, which they did on that Monday, that it was a $36 million mistake.
36 million.
$36 million in valuation.
In valuation.
Not total dollars, not
$36 million in valuation.
Just in valuation.
So they overvalued.
Goodyear's
property by
$36 million. That was my understanding, yes.
Okay. And so did you meet with the county assessor after this happened?
Yes.
And
yes.
Talk to me about your meeting.
After Thursday, I went to the county assessor's office and, essentially just said, okay, what is my new valuation going to be? How far off are we going to under-collect? And he showed me the number, and I told him, I said, this is not good, Grant. I mean, we're going to under-collect our sinking fund. Our taxes are going to double in our district. I mean, there's no way about it. And he didn't, I don't know if he believed that or understood, because we did just pass another, but he thought it may be because it was a new bond issue. But just in the nature of things, just because of the mistake, our property taxes on the sinking fund side was going to increase. And so that conversation was, we need to get out, we need to work together and get out ahead of this. We need to communicate this with our residents. And I said, if you write a letter, we'll sign it. We'll put a statement out together and go from there. Well, I think I waited, and we had July 4th that break. I hadn't heard anything from them. But I think when I came back after the break, I reached back out to him, and I think it was according to legal counsel, he was advised not to put anything out.
Okay.
So we scheduled a regular special board meeting because I think our residents need to be aware of what's fixing to hit them. And I was willing to put something out, explaining the situation, but I also wanted my board to be aware of that also.
Right.
We needed to make sure that we were on the same page. And so we had a special board meeting regarding, the letter that I sent out that summer.
Okay. So I want to back up just a little bit. The bond at this point has nothing to do with any tax increases. Like you said earlier, we've only got $1 million, and that's not even going to...
The 2022 bond issue has not hit our tax rolls.
So,
as of 2023, the only thing that we have on there is the $1 million of the general obligation.
And that is not on the tax rolls currently.
That the $1 million is on the tax rolls.
The $1 million is for this year, but nothing else is.
Nothing else is. We have not issued any other bonds except for that.
So this $36 million in overvaluation, you said was undercutting our sinking fund. So our sinking fund is what we use to pay our debt. So you're basically at a point now where the school can't pay its debt because of this. You're under collecting for your sinking fund.
We're going to default on a loan.
Which is not legal.
It's absolutely illegal.
Yeah,
absolutely illegal.
Yeah. So a $36 million overvaluation causes us to not be able to pay our debt at that point. Where you're pretty stressed about it. I won't say we are. You did a great job of shielding us teachers from that, but
no.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, pretty much. But also, just a side note here, and we did not know this. The $36 million mistake was found in June. I can say that I didn't know that.
Right.
At the time in June, it was a $51 million valuation mistake. See, previously in the month of January, after we did some investigating, after we got some information, they had a $15 million error that was corrected in January.
So it's
prior to June. So
it's not really 36. It's
51.
$51 million. So there's not one mistake. There's two mistakes.
Correct.
All right. We're going to talk to Mr. Robinson about that in just a second. So you just, kind of reviewing, and I'm going to do kind of a little half recap here. You have a special board meeting in July. You release a statement. Grant, because of Mr. Edwards, right, our county assessor, I just want to be clear for our viewers, it doesn't issue any kind of joint statement with you, basically says, based on the recommendation of legal counsel,
sure,
we, can't say anything. So Cache Public Schools is left to navigate this disaster really on its own, right? So at this point, you guys start doing your investigation. The school board, right, brings Mr. Robinson in, and we start doing some open records requests to see exactly how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, well, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
At that special board meeting, there's two things really to discuss.
Okay.
Okay, one was, the letter. This is the information I'm going to provide our residents. And two, what are we going to do now?
Right. Okay.
Because we had already started moving out of our middle school.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
We had already
so
had
now
a lot of things. We had a lot of things in play.
We're in crisis here. Yeah.
A lot of things that was in motion. The ball was rolling. So, my job is to inform our board of their options, and we provided them with 3 different options. And the option was either not do anything, split the projects, or do the whole thing. And our board decided that they wanted to just focus on the middle school.
Okay.
Cut the project back some. Cut the batch, put the project back, and so that's what we did. Now, you got to remember that the issuance of those bonds hadn't taken place yet. So.
Right. So we are basically kind of forward thinking. Our school board is forward thinking at this point.
They're moving forward.
Right.
We've got to keep moving forward. We can't just stand there in this problem and tread water.
Right.
We can't tread water for a long time. So we've got to make a decision and move forward. And that's what we did.
Right. But by kind of separating the projects and scaling back the middle school, it's going to put less burden on the taxpayer later on to try to compensate for this mistake that has happened by the county assessor.
Sure.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay, so Mr. Robinson, we're going to switch over to you and talk about these errors and some of the open records requests that you've done and some of the meetings that you've had since then. So you proceed with an open records request, and talk to me about these errors that you discovered, because nobody's really forthcoming about that. And Mr. Hance just says, we thought it was 1 and then it was 2, and oh my goodness, it's a $51 million mistake, at least at this point that you know about?
Whenever Mr. Hance and I actually had a call before the board meeting.
So this is before the July 11th
Before the July 11th board meeting. And obviously he's kind of at his wit's end at that point in time. And so, I start doing some research on my own just to figure out exactly, because I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. This is a complicated topic, and I've had to educate myself just like Mr. Hance has. I don't know his job. He doesn't know my job. And I don't think the assessor knows his job. So I reach out to the county assessor and call him on the phone, and I start trying to get to the bottom, get some answers. And it's like, he doesn't know the answers to the questions. So technically I probably learned more in 3 hours than he had in 9 years. And so we did an open records request, and I asked him for the documents to show us what the corrected evaluations had been and when the time frame was. And in that evaluation, it became apparent that he knew for an extended period of time and never reached out to anybody at Cache Public Schools to let us know that basically we were going to lose 40% of our evaluation, of our property evaluation.
So he knows for an extended amount of time. Now, does the excise board or the assessor, once they find errors, because they've got to fix something, right? Like, are they supposed to tell the State Board of Education? So
there is a Board of Tax Correction.
Okay.
And that I didn't really know that existed. And so ultimately what they do is they meet for 15 minutes before the regularly scheduled county assessor or county commissioners meeting. And the county assessor brings in and says, hey, I need you to approve all these tax corrections, sign here, press hard 3 times. And then he makes an adjustment. So the initial $15 million he knew about in December of 21. So he knew about it before the property tax statements, everybody's property taxes are even due. So they made a $15 million correction on the very first meeting in January of 22. The interesting part about that is that there was it wasn't all on one meeting, even though he allegedly had it approved all on one meeting. So there was one number on that, and then a couple weeks later there was some more information that was put out on a board of correction that was related back to something that was already approved. So then we go along, and there is an additional error that happened in 2020 on Goodyear that is not related to this.
Yep. That's not in our timeline.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
That one's way before our timeline starts. Okay.
So it's not on our timeline, but it was discovered. So there's an additional error where information was sent and not processed in a timely manner, which resulted in a penalty being charged. And so during the second meeting in January, whenever the Board of Corrections met, the county had to pay $533,000 back to Goodyear, which came out of the tax resale fund and our emergency fund. And there's allegations that it was attributed that the money went to Cache Public Schools, which is incorrect. So ultimately, that's the first mistake, not the second one. That's the first mistake.
So that's the first one. And then the second one is January of...
So all these mistakes are integrated in a manner that makes them very hard to follow.
Right.
And to determine what is related to what. So then we go along and there's another correction made in June.
Okay.
That's
so
the one that
is
Mr.
this
Hance,
correction 3 or 4 at this point?
Well, this is related to the $51 million. So there's
Okay.
another $36 million
Okay.
that gets corrected at that point in time for a grand total of $51 million worth of assessed value that went away in one calendar year.
Okay.
And so as I started going through this, you find out all these layers of people that are involved in this, and nobody said anything.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody let us know anything to make a correction. And the reason it's critical is because our funding from the state of Oklahoma for our additional state aid from the State Department of Education all goes out on the 15th of June.
That was the last payment.
The 15th of June.
So we had to
we
know.
known, so you literally got the call around June 17th from Rhonda Brantley. Had we known just a few days earlier,
We could have made a request for a supplemental appropriation.
Here's another argument. The county assessor, when they do these corrections, they are required to report that corrections to the state auditor's office and to the State Department of Education. So the State Department is aware of the adjustment.
and those were not
The
done.
first one in January was not. The other one was done after all the state aid had been dispersed. And just like a school, they cannot pay, after July 1, they can't go back and pay the expenditure from the previous school year.
And all the money had been dispersed.
And all the money had been dispersed.
All the money had been dispersed. So I want
essentially,
to get this
essentially,
right.
if it had been caught, and if we'd have been,
No, it was caught,
It was-
right?
it
It
was-
was caught,
it was
but no
after
one
time,
was
but
made
I mean,
aware.
concealed.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially, what happens is let's just take the $15 million one. So if that had been brought to the attention of the State Department, then that would have been an adjustment on our allocation, and that would have affected everybody. Every school in the state would have received another allocation because we'd have got more state aid. Because our ad valorem, obviously, because the ad valorem number that we have, they know we're going to undercollect because they have this correction.
So are you telling me that an error like this from the county commissioner, or I'm sorry, the county assessor, just for our school district, can affect state aid allocation for every school in the state of Oklahoma?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely, yes.
So this is really big. Like it doesn't just affect us; it affects every
Sure.
school kiddo in
Well, I mean,
the state.
in this manner, it helped them positively.
Well,
Yeah.
Yes, it helped. Here's what we got to remember. For that school year, other students in other schools received more money for their education than what the Cache district students did.
And this is because the assessor
Because
made
of-
two mistakes
because of the
and
mistakes.
concealed it
Yes.
and did not do the legal duty to provide those corrections to the State Department of Education, which
Yeah, their position is they don't have an obligation to let us know. But they haven't been able to respond to my request for, well, then why didn't you let the state auditor's inspector's office know or the Department of Education?
because they do have a legal
They have
obligation,
an
for
obligation
those two.
to
They have a
notify
form.
them.
Right. And had those two been made, then we would have eventually known about it because our state aid allocation would have changed.
Yes, it would affect our state aid it would have affected our state aid allocation,
Gotcha.
which would affect our general fund, which we use for operations. I mean, it affected us to the tune of we lost $1.7 million in general fund. So that's what I'm saying. For that year, I mean, our students went without $1.7 million that we could have used for additional teachers,
Right.
behavioral interventionists,
Right.
tutoring, a lot of different things that we could have used that for to benefit our students. But we were unable to do that because the money wasn't there because
Yeah.
And it's not just 1.7 million, because remember there's three buckets. There's building and sinking also. So the grand total is $3.32 million.
Because we've got to have money that goes into those buckets as well
Correct.
from those mills.
Now the only thing with the not making the State Department aware, it only affects the general fund, the state aid allocation. It didn't affect the sinking fund nor the building fund. You just undercollect there.
Mm-hmm. Which still would have not been good for us because that's where we pay our debts.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So have you had any other meetings since then, or any other significant discovery about things that have been going on with finances, or evaluations from the assessor's office?
We found another problem, but
Okay.
it's not at this point. I don't really want to discuss it at
Okay.
this point.
All right. Well, we will back off of that then. So I know one of the issues that has kind of been circulating through the community is when we sue, who ultimately is going to pay for this lawsuit? So are the residents of Cache School District going to have to pay twice? Or is this now going to be distributed
Which
through
one
the
of us
county?
are you asking that question?
I think maybe.
Well, let me,
okay.
I want to address that
Okay,
first.
yeah.
Okay, because, I mean, when this all came about, and we found the mistake, and we're doing, and Steve's doing his legwork and everything, everybody was upset that this, that our we're paying this. What's our
Right.
What is our repercussion, and what's going to happen to the person that made the mistake?
Right.
So when we were having these discussions about filing a lawsuit, we understood what the ramification is. I mean, we're going to sue our county, okay, and that money is going to come from somewhere, and we know it gets levied back onto our taxpayers. So the discussion with our board and council, we really put a lot of thought in this. I mean, we really it wasn't an easy decision. We don't want to be here. We don't want to be doing this. We want to work together with our county officials. We want to be a team, but we also felt like we owed it to our residents to try to do something to bring these, maybe not for monetary gain, but just to bring this problem to light. We can't just say, oh, well, oops,
Right.
he made
We have a history of
we have a mistake.
mistakes
Just let
at
it
this
go.
point. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think not necessarily for the monetary gain, but just for the focus on, hey, this is happening, and we need to we want to work together and bring this to light to where and share that it doesn't happen to someone else or
Right.
another school district or another entity.
Right.
So, I mean, and so as far as the lawsuit, I mean, it was a very tough decision for us all to make, and there's nobody else here that doesn't want to be dealing with that besides us, our board and myself included. I mean, it's just an unfortunate incident, but I think we feel like this is the only recourse of action that we could have had, or we could have just said, okay, we got to eat that and let it go.
Yeah.
So I don't think to me, it's not fair to our students that missed out. It's not fair to our taxpayers that had to pay. And so, I mean, this is the only recourse that we had, we felt like. So
Right.
I'll let.
And I do want to say, like, this is as you've gone through discovery, and I think that you could probably answer this one. There's a history, yes, that kind of makes this even more complicated, but a history of mistakes. Even if you just look back to 2020, and then these three, like we've got a pattern here of somebody's not crunching the numbers right and ultimately costing.
I think of a nice way to say this.
Okay.
I have limited confidence in the capacity of our county assessor and his folks to do their job.
Okay.
And it's frustrating. And to kind of elaborate on part of maybe some of the backstory, this is a hard decision because you do wonder where the money's going to come from. How do we pay? Because ultimately what would happen is you get a judgment against the county, they levy it across all taxpayers, and everybody pays their proportionate share. We understood that, and we talked about it with the board. We think we have a methodology that, regardless of if we're successful, how we can make it revenue neutral against our cash folks if we have to allocate that all across the county. But my position is in the lawsuit is that we paid our share.
Gotcha.
He's not our county commissioner, or he's not our county assessor. He's the Comanche County assessor.
Right.
So the balance of the residents of Comanche County should have to pay their share for a mistake.
And we've specifically asked for that in our lawsuit?
Yes.
Okay. So just to recap for our viewers, our lawsuit specifically says that Cache district residents have paid their share of this mistake, and then the rest of it needs to be levied across all of the taxpayers of Comanche County.
Because he is the Comanche County assessor, not the Cache assessor.
Gotcha. And when that money comes in, will it go to the county sinking fund or our sinking fund, which allows then debts to be paid? right?
That's gonna be up to the judge.
Okay, so the judge will make a determination.
If there's any monetary decision,
yes,
it'll be up to the judge on the amount and where that money is going to be deposited.
We will have some input, obviously a lot of input on a successful result on that and where the money's going to go. And that may get us way off in the weeds as far as how we're going to allocate that.
Right.
But, kind of procedurally where we are right now is the two county defendants, which is the Comanche County Assessor and the Comanche County Treasurer, have appealed a judge's ruling that made them remain in the lawsuit and told them to answer. So we've appealed that to the Oklahoma Supreme Court.
Okay.
The judge also let Grant Edwards individually out, which Cache Public Schools has appealed that because we feel like there's significant evidence that shows there was an intentional, consistent acts to have this not come out into public light for the purposes of getting reelected. Because I think had anybody in the county known that he was making these corrections and making these significant mistakes, I think that would have probably he ran unopposed. I think he would have at least had an opponent.
Right? Okay. So, so that's basically where we are. That was actually going to be my next question and kind of final question was, where are we at? And maybe just review. So, kind of up through July 11th, now it's really been Mr. Robinson kind of taking over, doing some discovery. You've discovered numerous errors from the county assessor's office. At least $51 million in valuation errors that have cost.
That was in 1 year.
That in 1 year, right? $51 million in valuation errors, more than one error that have cost the students of Cache Public Schools. So I guess, my last two questions. If there's anything that you want to wrap up about kind of where we're at in the lawsuit, you said we're waiting on some appeals.
Correct. We've appealed them. It's called a writ of certiorari, so it's appealed to the Supreme Court, and they go to a referee, for lack of a better way to put it, and the referee decides whether it's something that the Supreme Court in either a 3-judge panel or a full judge panel needs to review. Those typically could take anywhere from 6 to 9 months. I don't anticipate this one taking that long. The position that the county defendants have taken is that, we made a mistake, but you can't sue us because we're the government.
Yeah, right. This is that immunity clause, right?
Yeah, governmental tort claims immunity. But obviously, our position is this is not really he's incompetent.
Right. They don't get immunity
job.
For negligence.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
But that is a tort. Negligence is a tort. But he has contractual obligation to us.
Right.
And we are also a governmental entity. And so ultimately, this is a case of first impression. And that doesn't make you feel good to be the pioneer in a case like this because you'd like to have some consistency about, how this is going to go.
There's no precedent. There's no case precedent for this.
Literally talking to the
similar.
Yeah.
Right.
Talking to the State School Board Association, a couple lawyers I know that do a bunch of schoolwork, they can only think of 2 cases that are kind of close, and both of them were nothing, $50,000 deals, not $3.3 million deals. And then there's been a situation where an assessor put school district property and collected the money, gave it to the wrong school districts that have been resolved, but nothing of this magnitude or this level of impact on a school. Again, remember, the entire assessed value of every piece of property in Comanche County is about $750 million. This was a $51 million mistake in one account. One school district, one individual account. And
out of all that.
It's not like it was across the board where there's a little bit here and a little bit there. It was literally in one account from 1 year to the next is up $51 million. That's 8.3% increase in value of our entire county property taxes and over 40% increase in Cache Public Schools. And when questioned about it, we were assured that it was correct. It got certified, which once it gets to that point, we have no control. We have to follow the rule that get the amount that gets certified. We can't spend over that. We can spend up to that, or we can spend under that.
And we have no control over property values or
right. That all comes from the assessor's office.
And it's also important to understand that the $51 million that we keep on speaking about, we did not collect that money. That's just a number used on a tax rate. That's a valuation. So that money times the tax rate equals the taxes. So that $51 million
$5.5 million.
never came to us or anybody. That's just a number they use based on property value and their assessment, and take that number times the tax rate, and that's where the ad valorem's collected.
And so really, we're not the only affected entity. The other one just chose not to sue because
Right. So
it wasn't
the health
impact
department.
Comanche
Yep.
County Health Department, the tech center, and really Comanche County itself.
Okay. So everybody is hurt because of this.
But we get the lion's share of ad valorem.
Right.
Yeah, because we get about I think the VOTEC gets around 15 or 16 mills. We get about 30. We get 40 mills. So I mean, we have the lion's share of that. So
Okay.
but it's a significant amount of money going to one entity based on the mistake.
Yeah.
And there's been some incorrect information that has come out from other elected officials. This is not self-correcting. It would have been self-correcting had the information been provided to us.
There's a process for be self-correcting.
Right. So it
correct.
would have been self-correcting had
Partially self-correcting.
Right. Had the state Department of Education been notified at the time that the corrections were made by the excise board, right?
And the only part that had been self-correcting is just on
The general fund.
the general fund.
It would not have
sinking
self-corrected
fund,
on the sinking fund at
Which
all.
again is where we pay our debts from.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the only portion of this that would have been so-called self-correcting. So because the State Board of Education was never notified as they are required to be notified, the mistake has been paid by the taxpayers. It's not self-correcting.
Cache Public
Cache Public School District taxpayers fixed the mistake.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Well, so what happens is we were around $800,000 short on our sinking fund payment. So we have a bond payment. Let's just say that our bond payment was $1 million, okay, and we only collected $200,000. So we're $800,000 short. So that means our bond payment for next year goes from $1 million to $1.8 million. So that debt's on there. So we know we've got to pay $1.8 million. So what happens is we have to the county excise board. Okay, we know according to our estimate of needs that was been submitted, Cache has this debt. They have a payment of $1.8 million. So according to their valuation, how much money has to be raised in the sinking fund to make that payment? And that's collected on the debt as long as the interest. So that valuation, along with that debt, determines the sinking fund millage levies. And that's the only thing that we control.
So basically we went from 20 to 40 to 39, technically.
Right.
Yeah. So it was at 30, went to 20, then went to 40, and now it's dropped down to 34 because of our valuation went up 25 million.
So we just keep going back and forth, and I'm sure that our taxpayers have probably noticed that their valuations, or
Well, I mean,
it's just kind of going back and forth.
You see a lot of things. Well, I mean, like for instance, this year their property taxes should have went down a little bit, but it all depends on where you live,
right,
and what's going on. I mean, we have residents of our school district that are in Lawton, and they have a sinking fund, so they pay a little bit more than if you live on the east side, close to 82nd Street, I guess. You might pay more than somebody that lives out here on Post Oak, because of what they have, what levies they have.
Well, additionally, if you have a mortgage on your house,
yep,
your mortgage company is going to collect whatever your property taxes were the year before plus some. So, I mean, ultimately, the volatility in that is not, again, we don't control that. We present a budget based on the valuation, and then the collection of that is left up to the county treasurer, which is why she's in the lawsuit, is because she undercollected the tax that was certified.
Right.
And a lot of people, talked about their, that 1 year where they saw a decrease, they didn't see it in their house payment. Well, it could have been, if you're paying your taxes monthly through an escrow account, a lot of times, that escrow company might not lower that amount. You'll get it at the end when you pay off your house, but they're not going to let you default on a tax payment. So they're going to make sure they have the funding, to make sure they pay the tax bill.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that people don't, when it comes to property taxes, it gets a little complicated because everybody kind of does it separately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the one thing I want to be clear is we don't control that at all.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
We don't control anybody's property taxes are, what their property valuation is, what the assessed valuation is, or what's certified.
Yeah, the only thing we can control is that sinking fund millage levy, okay? And any changes made to that essentially is if we do another bond issue, if we approach our residents with another bond issue and they pass the tax themselves. I mean, essentially, you know.
So, and then it goes in the sinking fund to pay that debt.
Pay the debt. Yeah, that's why a school bond election is the only election where they must have the supermajority. It has to have at least 60%.
Because it does affect the taxes. That's the only thing we have a direct effect on taxes with. Gotcha.
So the supermajority vote approves it, then so be it.
Okay. So there it is. And I guess, you know, this is going to be my last question, and this one's going to be, you know, you guys can flip a coin for this one. I'm sure Mr. Hance will speak to this, but so ultimately we lost over $3 million as a school, right, during that school year. And you had made the comment that, you know, we were cooking with Crisco and kind of moving forward. What was your vision? Where do you think we would be as a district? I know as a teacher, we were hiring some people. We added some behavioral interventionists and some reading and math interventionists, and those small group classes are critical, we know, for increasing test scores and increasing students, just their overall learning ability and empowerment and helping those kids.
Yeah,
so
I just want to reiterate, you don't understand what kind of impact this had on our students because of the lack of service that they had that following year of what we could have provided.
Yeah.
You know, we were making big strides in adding things, as far as getting our students extra help. We were adding more programs. You know, we were providing those tutors. We were, providing those behavioral interventions. I mean, those things that are beneficial. We were able to maybe retain and recruit, teachers. Maybe, the way it goes. I mean, we were on the verge of possibly being able to provide a teacher bonus. But after that big hit, we had to stop all that and just pump the brakes, and now we've recovered from it. I mean, we're kind of going back in the positive direction right now. But that last year, I mean, we just kind of really slowed down on what we were doing and just really, really conserved. So I think that's the main focus we want to, what we are able to offer to our students. So I think, we've got to keep moving forward, and that's what the plan is.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I do have one more follow-up question for Mr. Robinson. Do we have any dates on court dockets yet, or are we still kind of in limbo waiting to see when those will get picked up by the appeal?
It's been stayed at this point in time until there's a ruling on the appeal.
Okay. All right.
But I'm a parent, and so I am going to make a comment to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of reiterate what Mr. Hance said, but you got to remember we're rolling out of the COVID year, and literally that was a lost year.
It was. Yes, it was.
Educationally, and all the programs were necessary. And the other thing that we have a lot of people. Oh, well, they don't need that, or they don't need that building, they don't need this. This school system, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 1,500 students whenever you started. 7 years ago?
About 1,800.
Okay, where are we now?
We're right under 2,100.
And so you got to have places to put those kids. They all want to sit inside. They all want air conditioning.
Yep.
They want chairs and desks. And the only solution or source to do that is to do these bonds. We have to keep improving our buildings and our structures and adding capacity as our school system grows, which is a testament to the quality of education that you give here or you can get here. And, that's the thing about the building and the field house is all these improvements are necessary, whether it's the field house where you don't have boys and girls taking a shower in the same location, or in the 7th and 8th grade building where they were overrun. I mean, they needed extra room. And so all these things, everybody wants to relate all this back to the bond issue, and it's not even related. There's no correlation at all.
Yeah.
But it's still a necessity going forward that we're going to have to do these things that we've obligated to further the education of our kids, of our students.
Yeah.
And, part of the reason that property values are as good as they are in cash is because in these buildings. Because you provide a high-quality education. The board is for it. Mr. Hance is for it. All the administration's for it. We've got to keep supporting it, or it does impact your property values. If you're in a dying school system, You probably have low property taxes, but you're also going to have low resale value.
Right, exactly. And I will say we do offer, what I feel like is a world-class education. I'm not only a teacher, but a parent as well. And we outscore the state in almost every tested area across the board. So we do a good job. And maybe we can come back and visit some of those numbers later on in the school year. Maybe whenever we get a ruling from the appellate courts, we can meet with you again and just kind of see where we're at.
Could be bad.
Could be bad. Could be good. We don't know. Maybe
We
a
don't
little bit
know.
of a shorter interview then, now that we've kind of gotten the bulk of the work out of the way.
That's
but
the thing. We're
yeah.
trying to answer questions that we don't have
Yeah.
we don't have the answers for yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
outstanding.
I know that there's still a long process to go in civil litigation.
But there's, in all retrospect, moving forward with what we're doing, we have to keep pushing the envelope, keep moving forward, doing great things for our students. This is a stumbling block, and it's not fun. We get it, but we got to also remember we're here for the kids, providing them the quality education they deserve.
And ultimately, this is about money that was supposed to go to the kids.
Exactly.
we owe it to them.
We got to shed light on something, because if this happened once, happened twice, it can continue to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've only been the Cash, for 8 years, but I grew up down the road, and I'm pretty sure. There's one thing about Cash: they might fight amongst themselves a little bit on social media, but when you go attack one of them, they all get behind them and support
That's right.
them.
That's kind of that.
They bond
that
together
Oklahoma
pretty
standard.
fast.
Yeah.
They are very prideful.
Yes.
Very,
yeah.
very prideful.
We did.
And
Our
they have a lot of
roots run deep.
Yeah.
Yes.
This bulldog has a bite.
Yes. Absolutely.
This community has a bite.
Yes,
So
it
that's
does.
what we're trying to. That's
Well,
close
and
to me.
again, we did this for the kids. There's no, again, it's not fun because you get attacked on social media, you get threats made to your board, you have other people in the community that are lashing out that really have no legitimate dog in the fight.
Right.
But we couldn't get the answers from the elected officials, and we were given no other recourse except to do what we did. Because you've seen on the social media posts, well, we called our insurance company and they said, well, you don't have any coverage, so you're just out.
Right.
Well, that's not a good enough answer to me.
Right.
And so ultimately, we're going to fight this, and we're going to fight it for the kids, and we're going to fight it for our teachers, and we're going to fight it for the people who pay the property taxes so we can have all this stuff.
And also, if the insurance is not there, that's not the school district's
Yeah,
responsibility.
they
That's not
could have
our
insured
fault.
over it if they'd have wanted to.
Yeah. So.
That's all I have.
That's
now.
all.
I'm off my soapbox.
Okay. No, it's good. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining
Thank you,
us
Amber.
today.
Thank you again, Zach.
Yeah,
doing that.
absolutely. Thanks to all of our Bulldog Press watchers, and we'll be back with some more information about what's going on in the district, especially as we head into the new year. So happy holidays. Thanks for joining us.